There are 7.5 billion living souls on planet Earth. How could we all possibly be relevant? We are all relevant because within each of us is a custom-built, unique story. We are all significant, we do matter, and I'm going to prove it one amazing story at a time. My home province of Ontario makes up 0.2% of the global population, and we're going to start there. One day, I will call on you. My guest today is afraid of the dark. She wasn't always afraid of the dark. To find out when and why this transition occurred, we have to go back to the very beginning. So, Bunny, where were you born, who was there, and how did that go?
I'm from Lachine, a suburb of Montreal, and that was back in 1962. And, well, that's where the body was made. I don't come from 1962. I come from 2012. And that would take a couple of moments to explain if you want to go there right now.
I would love to.
Okay, it's common for transgender people, well, not exclusively, but common, to say, oh, I've known since I was 4 or 5. That's common for almost anybody, for almost anything, not just transgender people. But they'll say, I knew there was something that didn't match. Mom thought I was a boy, and in fact, I was not. That's commonplace. In my instance, I had no clue I existed until 2012. I say 2012, it's what I can remember. It could have been 2011, maybe even 2010. I'm really not sure. But I showed up during a counseling session that I was having with the ex-wife and myself. And I just kind of popped out of nowhere. Hard to explain that. When I talk about myself, me, I'm Bunny. And when I talk about the past, it's him, the other guy, who was around since 1962 for about 50 years. So I don't identify myself as him. And I have no recollections, no memories, no experiences that go past 2012. Like I didn't exist in some way. Probably I could get a shrink to talk about this for hours. I have no inclination to find out how all this happened because sometimes you open a door and you don't like what's on the other side. So something happened. I showed up during the session and the counselor, the social worker, whatever her label would be, realized, okay, I'm over my head with this content. And so I got handed off to a crisis counselor. And then I started finding out things about myself. So it was like 2 years before I really started putting the puzzle together so that I could actually see who I was. And it was a very nasty period for those 2 years, 2012, 2013, where I was trying to kill him. Not commit suicide, I want to make that clear.
Right.
No, I was trying to kill him without it killing me.
Right.
Yeah, that's the trick of it all. And, well, I found out the hard way, you can't kill the other person. It
Right.
doesn't work that way. So yeah, that was the beginning of the process. I found out about myself, and it's like you show up, hey, who's using my body? And it's like, you mean you've been in here for 50 years? And I felt kind of ripped off.
Right.
So yeah, it's had some secondary effects. I managed to finally win control and give him the boot. At least he's gone to my knowledge.
Right.
I don't see him show up in any. But it had some secondary effects that have been troublesome, sometimes funny, but not very often. I have 7 years of experiences now to this point, and it sometimes leaves me feeling like a 7-year-old. Now, I don't want that to be mistaken with acting like a 7-year-old.
Of course.
That's not the case. There's a term called little. People like to emulate young people. I'm not emulating. I have 7 years experiences. That's all I got.
That's funny.
And sometimes I have the maturity and the wisdom of a 7-year-old. But on the other hand, it's like, but Leslie, you talk like a very educated adult. It's like, yeah, that does get confusing. But it's not always the case. When I get tired at the end of the day, I seem to go more towards my 7-year-old self. It has an impact. I think that's largely unique to me. I don't think I've actually heard of many people experiencing what I've gone through in this way. So I've not got anybody that I can talk to a bit about. And it always makes me feel like an outcast. I can't go to an adult support group. I don't feel like an adult, and they talk about things that go right over my head, it seems. Intellectually, I can understand them, but emotionally, I can't digest them. And I can't, of course, hang out with teens because even they seem to be strange to me. I've got some transgender friends that are in the below 13 category, and it's weird because I relate to them, and it's odd, and I feel comfortable around them. But this is the real world, and there's no way people are going to go with that. So it's only rare moments when I've got a couple of local friends, and I get together with them, and it's like, hey, you want to color? And or play with my Legos or my Barbies, and playing comes easily to me. And a classic thing with older persons, you notice how time seems to speed up as you get older. So here I am in a 57-year-old body, and life should be flashing by rather quickly, but no, actually, time seems to have reset. I experienced life about the same speed as your 7-year-old kid would at, normal
That's interesting.
process. So yeah, it's kind of handy because every day just seems to last forever for me.
Right. So you live in a small town, central Ontario. What is the LGBT community like in Lindsay, Ontario?
Well,
and what do you think of the LGBT acronym?
Okay, I'll talk about the town first.
Sure.
First couple of years when I was out full time and right out there, I was of course concerned and worried because the usual dialogue is, "Oh, small town, that's about as hard as it's ever going to get." And Lindsay is a nice place, and it seems to have a lot of seniors gravitate to it, and it's right on the edge of the Kawartha Lakes and cottage country scene. A lot of people come in and out, but most people that live there are seniors, and you would think that's going to be troublesome. But actually, Lindsay's quite nice. I've had no shortage of good encounters. There's been a few bad moments, but this is like 4 years of really being right out there, and I've got like maybe 4, 5 momentary incidences where somebody said something negative and it was a transphobic comment, but that spread out over 4 years is not much of a frequency. I know that there are others that have a harder time, but I seem to have been at least blessed with not having a bad experience. I have a lifetime active background with the St. Paul's Anglican Church in Lindsay. The family went there, so I've been involved with that church since 67. A kid, then a teenager, then a young adult. I wandered off for a chunk of my life, but I've been, back active there as well. And they're very accepting. According to the Anglican Church of Canada, the Anglican Church is accepting of same-sex marriage, but there is another church in town, the Cambridge Street United Church in Lindsay, just recently did their official certification process to becoming an affirming church. That's not the same as just being, a church full of nice people. They had to go through the process of becoming declared officially an affirming church. What that means to the LGBT acronym, the whole length of it,
Right.
They accept everybody without judgment, without scorn. They will not teach you to be anything other than yourself. It's a safe place. And that term is important, safe place. And that means that if you're a gay man, no one's going to give you any trouble. You might even find another gay man in the congregation. If you're a twin spirit indigenous person, that place is going to be okay to you if you're that kind of a person, if that's your faith. They don't have a very rigid system for their daily worship. It is basically what you would expect a Christian-based congregation, but they are very inclusive. Anybody, regardless, is possible to go there. In spite of my religious history, and I mean, I was Christian as Christian you can get for a long time. I wanted to be a minister when I was 20, but I don't know where that went. Today, right now, as a result of my own education, my own experiences, I am an atheist. But they don't have a problem with me there. And I don't have a problem with them, specifically them, because I know Jesus' teachings. He would be proud of these people. They've listened to him. They do not judge. They're not allowed to judge at all, ever, anyone. And they're willing to let everybody be part of their religious family without bias. So I feel comfortable there. I go there, I talk with them, I socialize, I congratulate them on at least fulfilling their teachings, beliefs properly. There are places you can go where that's not going to be the case. That's unfortunate.
It's true.
On the subject of the LGBT acronym, well, there are some of us who'd rather not be in the acronym. I waffle on that. I'm more on the side of rather not. There are pieces of the acronym sometimes that fail to accept an all-inclusive spirit. Some of the lesbian crowd will not be friendly to transgender women. Some of the gay male crowd won't necessarily be very accepting of transgender men. And then the intersex crowd could possibly run afoul of anybody in the acronym potentially. And what's really sad and really hard to understand, there are people that are transgender and are not necessarily nice to other transgender people. They have this idea that some are more transgender than others. That's a lot of hooey. You either are or you are not. And well, you should never knowingly be part of the problem, if nothing else.
That's right. It's unfortunate that this kind of behavior just kind of leaks into all walks of life.
Mm-hmm. It's one of the sad ways where being transgender, you're still quite ordinary.
Yes. Yes. So how did your mother and father are both still alive?
My father was passed away in 2007, so he never got to encounter me. That's unfortunate.
Right.
My mom, she got to see me in 2013 into 2014 to some extent. Her health was kind of wobbly. She was living independently in an apartment building, I would visit her frequently, but she wasn't taking her meds with any amount of systematic methodology. And so she was in the hospital getting sorted out frequently. So she didn't really get to see too much of me, but I would go shopping with her frequently. But I hadn't really gone full time yet. Eventually, the situation worsened to the point where she had to go back to Ottawa to be amongst my brother and my sister, so that she would be able to, help with the process of getting into assisted living. She just needed somebody to keep a regular eye on her.
Sure.
So she was aware that I was transgender. I think she was relatively accepting. I had a few tearful moments visiting with her, but I still looked like the previous person. It was a significant moment when I eventually was able to venture to Ottawa for a Christmas gathering of the family. And I went kind of worried, wondering, okay, how is this really going to go over? Because no one had actually met me, the real me, the whole enchilada. And I had started going full time the start of 2014, and I had started on hormone therapy middle of 2014. And then Christmas happens for 2014, and I look totally like me. And I got there at my brother's house, which is where I would stay for the 5 days, and everything just washed away clean. My brother greets me in the kitchen, and he says to his grandson, "I want you to meet my sister, Leslie." And that was everything. It was like, okay, that signaled all I needed. And it was like a wave of relief.
Wonderful.
And my 4 nephews were introduced. I became Aunt Leslie. And, it was incredible. My mom, I visited with her quite a few times over the visit for hours at her place. And we had great talks, great opportunities. And I think, it was difficult for her at first, but she warmed to it fairly quickly. And she had the benefit of a retired minister individual staying at the same facility. He said, "You have to accept Leslie as she is." And I guess he was able to speak to her in a spiritual sense. And my mom also encountered a nurse that was part of the staff. That nurse had a son who is in fact her daughter.
Right.
And so she knew how to talk to my mom. So they had good rapport as well. In the end, my mom was able to tell me, "Well, I always wanted a second daughter. I just didn't think I'd have to wait so long."
Mm-hmm.
And that was a great
awesome
statement from her.
Absolutely. So you mentioned hormone therapy. Do you want to talk about transitioning to you medically?
Yes. Hormone therapy is normally stage 1 of a 2-stage potential process. Not everybody does the stage 2, and there's a lot of reasons for that I'll mention in a moment. Stage 1 hormone therapy is usually a prerequisite for about a year before you can even do stage 2, even if you've got the money. Normally, if you're transgender female, you need to take what is called an anti-androgen, which is a blocker. It blocks male testosterone. You turn off certain influences on your body. And not always, but in my case, it was a couple of months later, you take a female hormone, and goes by a lot of brand names, basically estrogen. And that basically unlocks various female characteristics in a person. And it doesn't happen overnight. And of course, a lot of people go, "Oh, I'm noticing changes." It's like, it's been a week. You're not noticing any changes. But some people can get pretty fast effects. There is no absolute truth. Every individual's biochemistry is going to be different, which is the reason why it's important to always have a proper endocrinologist monitoring you, because this stuff is dangerous to your heart, dangerous to your body, and generally you need somebody who knows what they're doing, monitoring your blood through regular checkups and saying, okay, you're progressing nicely, because you just don't do it willy-nilly. So the anti-androgen I started off with is called Spiro. It's got a full-length name, and I won't pronounce it. Everybody calls it Spiro. And it does what it does. It's a little rough on, I believe it's kidneys. I think it's kidneys. Anyways, it's rough on it. It's just, what happens when you take stuff into your system. It has, an influence on everything. I'm currently no longer in need of either, but the one I went and used the most was Ciproterone. I think I pronounced that right. And it's not as bad as the Spiro, but it has an effect on the liver. Pick your organ.
Right, yeah.
But it's not as bad, so you're picking the better of the two. Spiro is normally used by cisgender women. That's women who were born as female and like it just fine. It's normally used by them as a water pill, for reasons that a doctor would have to describe why you do that. When I went off to Spiro, I immediately gained back the 10 pounds that I had lost because it was all water weight.
Really?
So yay.
Yeah.
But the process of the hormones on me, and it's different for everybody. Well, without wanting to get too completely bold in statements here, within about 2 months, 3 months, it turned it off. That thing that I did not want.
Gotcha.
Normally, when a guy has that turned off, it's like the worst thing that could possibly happen. But for me, it was, yes,
the best
peace
thing.
and quiet. Because I hated it.
Right.
So I had no real day-to-day connection with it other than when I was in the bathtub and it's like, oh, you again.
Right.
So I was happy for that. And then the estrogen. And then about 3 months after that, but 6 months in total. And yeah, life granted me this interesting revelation, which still having trouble with. I went from being what I thought was a heterosexual man. I was so wrong on that. I went to it turning off, and then all my interest in females just died. It's like, okay, married for 27 years, and then no longer could care less about them. But I had this incredible urge. I was like, oh my God, I need a man. And it's like, what the hell? Well, it was new to me.
Ta-da. Yep. Wow.
And that led to some really interesting effects on dating, I got to tell you.
My goodness, dating, yes. Why don't we go there? Do you mind? Would you mind going there? How did, especially at first, what was dating like? It must have been...
Well, I'm not your average individual. I met the 27-year-old 27-year marriage ex-wife after a blind date. And that was like 24. And previous to that, I had no experience whatsoever. I was actually a virgin on my wedding night. How about that?
Wow.
I didn't
How
know
about that?
clue what I was doing. It was comically embarrassing, I suppose. But so 27 years of marriage, and then suddenly I'm living on my own, which I'd never experienced ever before. And dating. I'm in my 50s, alone and dating, and I've been out of the workforce for more than 20 years due to a disability. No need to go into that. Suffice to say, I had fibromyalgia and couldn't work a damn.
Right.
I had no exposure to like a workforce, no colleagues, nothing, no social life at all, and dating. I've got nothing polite to say about online dating. It's fake as the day is long, and you're only going to meet two kinds of guys on online dating sites. The introverts who just want you to talk to them, they are not coming, and scamps out of Nigeria or something or other. They're going to talk all nice and dandy to you until they could ask you for money, and then you realize, oh, okay, you're not one of the introverts. So I went through that hell for several years, and I kept telling myself, well, my friend Dar found her husband on a dating site. It's got to be possible. And that's the only thing that drove me on. It's like, well, it's got to be possible. But it wasn't.
No.
I met so many reasons to hate online dating. And today's world, it's not even done that way. The kids today, well, I call kids. Anything under 30 is a kid to me.
Right.
They use their cell phones, so they use apps, and I had no idea. And well, for quite some time there, Facebook apparently was an option, but I never knew it, and maybe just as well. The only one incident that I had on dating that I want to bring up, because the rest of it's just so generic and nasty. Well, hormone therapy, yeah, it unlocks stuff. It unlocks a lot of stuff. And one of the things I wasn't prepared to was to fall in love with my best buddy, an old friend from my childhood, my years in school. And everybody's going, don't tell him. And it's like, oh, I've got to tell him. It's going to drive me insane if I don't. And it didn't go well.
Oh, dear.
So I basically said, after half an hour's worth of preamble, I think I'm in love with you. And the response that I got was, well, not really what I was expecting. He had a hard time accepting that I was even transgender in the first place. He says, oh, you're suffering from several severe depressive breaks. And, well, I haven't really had any communication now with him for several years. It's unfortunate, but
that's too
yeah, hormone therapy will make you do things you really wouldn't normally do.
Hey guys, just a quick call to action break. If you're a podcast connoisseur like myself, you know that a series will have sponsors and advertisers to help offset the cost of producing your favorite show. Myself, I prefer not to bother you with third-party services, but keep it between us. If you find value in it happening in Ontario, maybe you could buy me a Jameson's. Jameson's. I'll cover the overhead, and you get the tab. I'm providing a link to Patreon in the show notes, and it's a really simple process, and the series becomes ours, partner. Okay, so we're just wrapping up. Let's get back to the good stuff. Okay, so your name is Leslie Bunny Niyori.
Yes.
Niyori is interesting. Why don't you tell me about that?
Well, I wanted to go with a complete new name. So, and I'd actually had no problem with the middle and the first name, or first and middle name originally. I feminized them. Most trans people will not want to talk about their previous dead name, but I've got no problem with it. My name was originally Leslie Robert, Leslie, and so I wanted to change it to a female-sounding name, so I went with Leslie, Lesley, so that on documents I could make a distinction, because I didn't want to be mistaken for him. And I went to Roberta, and the last name, though, completely crafted. I wanted a fully new name. I got a bit of flack from Mum about changing the last name, but eventually made her realize, hey, I've got a perfectly good son carrying on your name. Don't sweat it. So I had to come up with a last name, and you just don't open the phone book and pick somebody's name. I had to be creative, at least in somehow. So I've had a fondness for anime since the mid-'90s, so I've got an interest in, Japanese culture to a point. I'm not desperate to go to Japan. I don't like their cuisine. I just like the anime. That's it. So I thought way back in the 90s when I had a business that I was trying to run, it was called Less for More. I thought it was kind of silly, but everybody in the business course liked it. I thought, I'll make that into an email. So I looked up the words, and I'm pretty sure that my translation was mangled, but Less for More in a Japanese English dictionary comes out as Sukunai ni Yori. And I go, well, no one's ever going to get the Sukunai part correct. But I thought if I merged the last two parts, the Ni with the Yori, Niyori. I thought, well, that comes out kind of clever sounding, because then I get Leslie Roberta for more. So, yeah, Niyori comes from an email address that I crafted.
Wow.
I could have gone with Sukunahi Niyori as my name, but I thought, well, everybody likes Leslie.
Yeah.
I like the name Leslie. I was happy enough with it. But in recent time, I decided that I was finally actually going to go with a complete rebuild of the name. So I changed the middle name to Bunny, and I decided I'm going to go with my middle name first for anybody new, for friends, for general conversation. So I'm generally going with Bunny Niyori these days. My fiance likes Bunny, and then there's a lot of silly chatter about that.
Right. Does that mean you found love?
No, it found me. Yeah, geez. Well, 2018 was a horrible year and a great year all wrapped up into one. It was the last straw dating examples, the last straw in a way where I wasn't going back. I returned a few times and always the same result. And it's like, why do I keep doing this? So like about, I think it was like July, I'd had that last straw moment. It's like I was ready to just go out and find some guy, beat the hell out of them just to get it out of my system. I was disgusted with men. If it hadn't been for somebody that I actually had met that I called Dad, I don't think I'd have ever liked men ever again. But he proved to me that it was possible that there are some out there. But yeah, I was disgusted and I was in a bad place. And then I'm walking my bicycle to the bike shop along a small street in town, York Street. It's a one-way. It's not got much traffic. It was a short hop from my place to the store. And this person's approaching me on the other side of the street. And they veer off to my side and walk up to me. And I believe the first thing they said was, "You're no longer the only one." And of course, what? And so we started exchanging chatter, just idle conversation. And they revealed that they were transgender female, just like I was. And it's like, great. And of course, I went into full chatty mode and gave them my phone number. It's like, oh, we've simply got to get together more. Because it's like, there's actually an adult transgender person in Lindsay, and they're transgender female, and I can chum with them.
Amazing, yeah.
So things just started from there. It went in directions that neither one of us had planned on, though. I'll leave some of that for Darcy to have fun with. I don't want to steal all the good topics. But suffice it to say, she moved in with me relatively quickly. They've got a term, I've never used it before, called U-hauling. She just moved into my life, and I was not interested in her ever going away, and it just snowballed from there in such a wonderful way.
Awesome. That's really great to hear. And maybe your best friend from the past, they'll hear this podcast and maybe understand a little more on that end. All right, well, I'm going to wrap things up. I would like to follow up with you someday and see how life is treating you.
Well, I think the only big event that I've got in my future, there's two big events. I am getting married on October 26th.
What?
I'm going to become Mrs. Leslie Niyori Wells eventually. And the only other significant event I think headed for me is being a transgender senior citizen. I'll wait on that one.
Yeah, that's something. Yeah, well, we'll have you back and we'll discuss senior citizenship.
Yes, I'd love to have an update of the wedding.
Yes, and the wedding.
Mm-hmm.
Am I invited?
Anybody listening to this could conceivably call themselves potentially invited.
Really? How would somebody listening, maybe if they wanted to chat with you or ask you some questions, how would they be able to find you?
They can inquire of you. You'll know how.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you, Bunny, very much for coming and being open. And it was a great talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much for everybody listening.
It Happened in Ontario is recorded at Treblecock Studio in downtown Peterborough. For more information, go to treblecock.ca. Thanks as always to my dear friend Paul Thompson for the music.
I've blessed others, been blessed in return.